Lord Lieutenant of Greater London, Sir Kenneth Olisa, will be responsible for greeting guests at Westminster Abbey. Daunting. He joins me now alongside our royal editor, Russell Myers. And also overnight, both of you, we heard from Princess Anne talking about what sort of king Charles would make. I have to say, I know you shouldn't have favourites, Sir Kenneth, but she's my favourite. Shall we have a wee listen to what she said? What she said, Sir Kenneth, about level of service, because that's what runs through the whole thing, isn't it?
The whole thing being the royal family, monarchy, the constitution.
Everything.
Yes. No, the whole thing, it does indeed. Well, as the late Queen made that point, she was here to serve us, not the other way around, and the King will repeat that in his oath at the weekend at the coronation. And this is the hard bit for people who haven't really thought about the monarchy to get their minds around. You know, this isn't the Kardashians. This is a fundamental part of being British, and it's a repository of our values. And it underpinning it all is the fact that they serve us, not the other way around. And it's quite a hard concept to get one's mind around.
Yeah, it is actually, and you're right. You know, the whole kind of soap opera of it all, like watching The Crown, and as you said, the whole, you know, the whole thing about we're seeing now the robes that he's going to be wearing, and you know, some people are saying, oh my goodness me, that could have been, you know, someone could have worn that for the Met Ball last night. You know, and no, it's not about that though. It's not.
Yeah. Well, there's two things just in that Princess Anne interview. She was talking about duty and service, and of course, you know, we know exactly what we're getting with Charles because he's been in the job, you know, 50 years waiting to take the top role, and also talking about a slimmed down monarchy. She's saying, you know, pretty much how much more slimmed down can we be? This is pretty much it. Yeah, exactly. And of course, we've had some notable absentees over the last couple of years. But you know, moving on to sort of the majesty of this event, and it is going to be majestic. I mean, this is what we do the best, surely. You know, it's Britain at its best, and you've got all the gold robes, but the history coming out of what is going to be a fantastic event as well. We've got the golden robes used by Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, George VI wore these as well. We've got a fancy oven mitts, glove, gauntlet. I mean, it's
very
call it what you will, but it is an important part.
Let's call it that.
So, Sir Kenneth, on the day, you have got an extraordinary job. Because everybody that comes in, you have to... I mean, they'll all be very nervous and everything, and you're the kind of gatekeeper. Well,
I'm not the gatekeeper. I'm just in a long line of gatekeepers, just to be clear here.
I know, but
very much.
Yes,
you're
let's go back a step to the funeral, which was the last time where we had something like this in Westminster Abbey, and heads of state from all over the world came to pay a tribute to the Queen and the things that she represented globally. So the energy that's there in the Abbey from that whole occasion is still there. And so now we've got the positive side of it. It's no longer mourning a death, but rather now celebrating essentially the birth of a new king. And we've got the same people coming to say, you know what, there's something very special about this country, and we want to be part of that moment. And yes, you're quite right about the robes and so on, but that's, again, that's the human condition, isn't it? It was the Met Ball last night. We're all fascinated by what people are wearing. You know, we're wearing different things. It matters to both of us. Clothes are really, they're big symbolic statements. And we mustn't forget Westminster Abbey is a church. And therefore, there's a whole religious process that has to happen as well. Ceremony and tradition and so on. And then finally, of course, we've got kings going all the way back to Edward the Confessor there in Westminster Abbey. This is our nation's history. These are our values.
And you talked about the fact that, I mean, you know, that it is, of course, a religious ceremony. The king has been very, very adamant that he wanted this to be very inclusive. All religions, you know, people from all walks of life have to be there and be represented.
Well, so if you think about what really... You meet a stranger in a bar at the airport and you talk about yourselves. What are you going to talk about? You'll talk about, almost inevitably, your heritage. Where are you from? Where do you live, etc. You'll talk almost inevitably about what you do as a job, and you'll talk almost inevitably about your faith. And you might talk about your family. Those are sort of the four things that are the human condition. And so when you think about the importance of faith, it's a big leg of what makes us what we are as human beings. And so the king saying that actually faith is important rather than the church of which he is the head is the most important thing. Again, it's a big step forward to this great inclusive nation that we have become.
And it is, you know, you've talked about it, we've talked about it as well. You know, of course there will be people who They say they're not interested. I bet they'll still watch, though. But they'll say they're not interested. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But it can be a force for good. It can be a force for uniting us all.
I mean,
I'd like to think that.
On that point of how this is going to be portrayed across the world, I think it's important to recognise that the King has invited, hundreds and hundreds of ordinary people. I mean, people who represent the charities that he is aligned to, people who've helped out during the COVID pandemic. I mean, this is really important to him, and not just having all the lords and ladies and the aristocracy invited. I mean, that's what it will all be, very inclusive and the most diverse, I think,
in fact,
history.
The whole idea of a trimmed-down coronation is the lords and ladies have been reduced in numbers, and as you call them, the ordinary people, I think we probably call them fellow citizens, but the ordinary people are filling those seats. And this is what the royal family does so importantly. They sprinkle pixie dust as they travel around meeting people, thanking them, congratulating them for contributing to society, contributing to communities. And, that's what they do day in and day out. And anyone who's ever met a member of the royal family will remember almost everything that happened.
Absolutely,
including their tongue growing by 3 or 4 feet, not being able to speak, wobbling and so on. But they'll be able to remember all those things. It's a really important part of reminding us of our national values. And so for those people to be invited to the service says it's genuine as opposed to just going around patting people on
what sort of...
shoulder.
I mean, you've worked with the late Queen Elizabeth. What sort of... it's going to be a different pace, isn't it? It's going to be a different... It is going to be different. What do you think... What sort of king do you think he's going to be, though?
Well, he's going to be king for everybody. And as Russell was just saying, we'll see that in the Abbey. But so the pace is 100 times faster. The rhythm of Her Majesty...
It's like he's got so much to do.
Well, but he's rushed out and done these things that we're both talking about. So, for example, that earthquake in Turkey, Syria, woof, he went out to meet some Syrian refugees. Woof, he went out to meet some Turkish refugees. He was with some Darfur refugees just the other day. But it goes on and on and on. And there are all points of the people who live in our country who've decided that this is the place in the world to be and sharing our values, but at pace. Whereas Her Majesty was a rather more graceful rhythm, I would say.
Okay.
And I have to say, I don't know how he keeps it up. I don't do anything like as much as he does, and I'm completely exhausted most of the time.
He looks after himself, and then Camilla looks after him as well, I think, and everybody else. Thank you so much, both of you. It's absolutely fascinating, and I will most definitely be watching, because it's a spectacle.
Countdown is on.
It's a spectacle, it's history.
I think you'll find yourself amongst many millions of others, possibly billions.
I think so.